Welcome everyone. I am Adrienne Hodge, your instructor for this evening, and this class is on Implied Line. And we've had several classes before this one in this Artist Loft 101 series. And our moderator, Jimena, is going to drop the links, the video links on YouTube to all of those if you want to check out some of the previous classes. I see Dixie saying she's been following the classes and she's loving it. Love to hear that. Where's everyone coming from this evening? I am in Austin, Texas. We've got a nice group tonight. I see we've got Sarah from Baltimore, Chicago, Liz from California, Debbie from Pasadena. All right. Oh, they're coming in fast now. Emily from Houston, my hometown. Val from Riverside, Connecticut, Kylie from San Diego. Okay, wish I could read them all. So Jimena's going to be running the chat tonight. So if we've got a lot of recurring questions, she'll interrupt me and let me know what your burning questions are. Like I said, I'm Adrienne Hodge, a teaching artist based in Austin, Texas. I've taught for over 10 years, middle school, high school, and I've taught adults for about 8 or 9 years now. And I'm also a practicing artist and host my own independent classes. So you can check out my stuff on Instagram or my website, and Jimena's going to drop my link tree in the chat, and that's where you can see everything else that I've got going on. I've got some other classes coming up that are independent classes, and then lots of classes with Michaels. So I'm going to get to what is Implied Line in just a moment. So go ahead and switch the view to my desk here. So the upcoming online classes that I have are mindfulness with ink and drawing and painting clouds. Those are the weekend of September 11th and 12th. And they're on Zoom. And if you want to sign up for either of those, I've got a promo code for you guys only, $20 off those classes if you use the promo code Wednesday, all caps. And you can find those through my link tree. I put them on Eventbrite as well, but you won't be able to use the promo code on Eventbrite. So, but if you sign up through my online shop or through the link tree link that Jimena just put in the chat. So I do a lot of work using calligraphy ink and paint these ethereal skyscapes and dreamscapes and lots of clouds. So both of those independent classes are based on that work. And you'll be getting lots out of those if you sign up. And then anything that you do tonight or in any of the Michael's classes that you find on YouTube, make sure to tag your work with the hashtags Make It With Michael's or Michael's Classes, and follow me on Instagram, tag me on Instagram in whatever you make with what we do tonight or from the YouTube classes. So we're going to be using a still life item tonight, or so piece of fruit, maybe a flower, a leaf. We've been sticking to organic subjects so far in all of the classes that we've had so far. So tonight will be no different than that. And we're going to be using the Artist Loft pencils. I've got the set of 12 with all the H's and B's. So you'll need those. You'll need a synthetic eraser or any eraser, and then blending stumps, sketch pad. I believe that was everything on the supply list. For what we're doing tonight, you can definitely use any drawing tool. You don't have to use graphite, but I will be using graphite. So if you want to use the same materials as me, that would be good. But I have some examples in pen here of what we're going to be doing. So this is a really fun exercise. I get really excited whenever I do this particular exercise in a class because it's it's fun. We're gonna do a timed exercise and we're gonna be drawing our still life object multiple times for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and then 1 minute. So each time we're drawing it, we're getting less and less time to draw the object. So the reason I asked you to get a still life item like a piece of fruit or a flower is because we don't have a lot of linear perspective coming into a still life item like this. And we're going to be getting to linear perspective later on in this series of drawing classes. So stick around and keep tuning in. But something like this is technically 2-point perspective. And if you don't have a lot of experience drawing with linear perspective, you might be getting stuck on that particular skill while you're drawing an item that is geometric in any way. So try to pick a form that is not geometric, that doesn't have a geometric shape to it. So, but the reason I pulled out this example was just to let you see what I'm talking about when it comes to implied line. And so here's another example of this exercise doing 8 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, and then that was 1 minute. And I definitely took the perspective out of my 1 minute there because I was so limited in time. So when we get to the 1 minute drawing, that's when the magic happens. So sometimes when I start this exercise, people will be right up until the end like, okay, but what about implied line? This is basically a device for getting you to understand how to approach a drawing using implied lines. So what does the word implied mean? What does it mean if I imply something? Drop it in the chat, your answer. Somebody's asking what pencil is it good to start these drawings with? We'll get to that in just a minute. First, I want to know, okay, not literal, suggesting, good. The full details are not needed, good. Yes, you're suggesting. I love that word suggesting. I use that all the time. Understand without actually laying it all out. It leads your mind to see it without being there. These are great answers, guys. Yeah. So you're suggesting it, you're leading the audience to see it without it actually being there, right? Like a connect the dot drawing. So, and we see implied lines everywhere. We see faces in clouds or bathroom tiles or, you know, the shadow falling across a curtain. We're always seeing these implied shapes and forms and lines. But then when it comes to you know, suggesting something in our work, it's really hard to get away from wanting to draw every hard outline on a form, or wanting to, you know, put something there or emphasize something that maybe doesn't need to be emphasized. And, you know, sometimes less is more, right? So there's lots of reasons why implied line is important in a drawing practice. Whenever I'm teaching with pen and ink, it's important because you can't erase when you draw in pen. So you need to have a good understanding of implied line so that you don't draw a line that you don't want to be there and then you can't erase it later. But with just sketching with your pencils, it's also important to get started, like in the very first class on contour lines and rendering forms, or it was called Intro to Graphite and Drawing Forms. That was the very first class. And we're going to be repeating that class coming up soon in September. But we drew the contour lines on a form and we talked about, you know, everything on the, how a contour is every surface of a form. Jimena just dropped the link to that class in the chat. So when we talked about that, you know, we were really kind of putting everything and the kitchen sink into our drawing, like just really trying to get our brains to wrap around all of the surface of that form, right? And as you're developing an understanding of a form, it's good to draw everything. But when you're first getting started on a sketch, the groundwork that you lay down for that sketch oftentimes needs to be just kind of fast and loose, right? Or a lot of artists who have been drawing for a long time maybe struggle with being a little too technical and everything is really tight and they want to loosen up. So doing an exercise like we're going to do tonight can also, in addition to helping you create drawings that are, you know, have more implied lines than every line, you know, outlined, it can just help you loosen up and get a drawing that feels like the essence of the object that you're drawing. And I think that's one of those things that everyone wants to be able to do, right? To be able to capture the essence of the thing that they're drawing. And the way that you do that is by observing that object or that subject as much as you can. And so there's so many different things worked into this timed exercise. It's forcing you to draw the same object multiple times, so you're really observing it. And by the time, it may seem like a hard thing to do, but by the time we get to the 1 minute drawing, you've already observed it and gotten started on it, you know, 4 other times. So it may seem like I'm never going to be able to draw this whole object in a minute when we're first beginning, but when we get to the end, you're going to find your brain and your hands have created a muscle memory of, you know, certain details and things about this form that are going to help you along. And I'm going to be doing the exercise right along with you, so it will hopefully help, like the different tidbits that I'll add as we're drawing. If this is the first drawing class that you've attended in a very long time and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about when it comes to contour lines or shading techniques, then that's when you want to check out those other classes that Jimena dropped the links to on YouTube, because in all of those we talked about various shading techniques. So there was a class on tonal shading there, and then there was 2 classes on alternative shading techniques. So hatching, cross hatching, stippling, and scribbling. And in all of those classes, we talked about making sure that your value, your shapes of light and your shapes of dark are wrapping around the contours of a form. So that was the tonal shading example, and we did that with and without a ground. And then with hatching, cross hatching, we did various objects and broke that down in those other 2 classes. So we've got one directional parallel lines, multiple directional parallel lines, or lines going all different directions, crisscrossing, etc., still following the contours, and then stippling and scribbling. So we've got the dots and then the scribbling. So I'm not going to go into detail on all those because we just spent so much time in those other classes on those, but that's my quick little review of the shading techniques. Okay, so any questions before we get started? Oh, somebody asked what pencil to start with. So that's a good question. You're probably going to use a variety of materials for, well, of the materials in the supply list. So we've got all the 12 pencils in the set. We've got the blending stumps or Tortillons. I also put the sandpaper on the supply list so that you can sharpen your pencil down to a point, or if you start to lose your definition on your pencil, you can rub it on the sandpaper block to get it a little sharp again for yourself. Yeah, but any other questions? So we're going to use all of those materials, whichever ones suit you the most, but I'll say as we switch from drawing to drawing, like with the 15-minute one, you're probably going to use, you know, all of your pencils if you have them all there in front of you. For the 10-minute one, you might use all of them, but you're going to probably want to gravitate more towards your B pencils or your darker pencils. And then whenever we get to the 5-minute, the 2-minute, and the 1-minute ones, I'm going to suggest that you stick to just your B pencils. So not starting out sketching with the lighter pencils first, because we're going to want to block in our biggest value shapes really quickly and fill things in as quickly as possible. And yeah, the 2-minute and 1-minute goes very fast, and you're not going to have much time to do anything other than block in those shapes. And that's when the bones or the essence of that form are hopefully going to come to light. All right, so since this is a timed exercise, we need to get started pretty soon, but any questions on anything?
Not so far. I think we're good to go.
Okay, cool. So Jimena's going to be keeping time for me or for all of us here. And I know this feels like stressful when it's like, oh, the timer has started. But once we get rolling, I think it's pretty chill exercise. So I'm going to put my little rose in a place that looks nice where maybe somebody else could draw it too. Last week, a couple people did that. They drew my my still life item. So if you want to do that tonight, if you don't have one handy, you're welcome to do that. If you don't have a really strong light source on your object, you might, if you can, quickly position a lamp or something so that you get a really strong shadow happening. I don't have the strongest shadow because I didn't want, you know, a bunch of weird shadows falling across the page too much, but definitely the more dramatic your shadows are on your form, the better for you. Okay, so Jimena, if you could go ahead and start the timer for 15 minutes. I'm gonna get started with an H pencil. I'm gonna use my 4H, one of my lightest pencils, to get started sketching. So did we start our 15-minute timer?
Okay, go.
Okay. So normally when I do this in person, I'll like put on some like chill music for the 15-minute one, and then like put on like music with a faster tempo for the shorter minute drawings. Okay, so take your time with your 15-minute one. Really, this is just to get acquainted with your item, and you know, it may take you 5 minutes just to get started sketching it out. So don't worry about implied line at all. Honestly, it's the whole point of this exercise is to help you develop an understanding of how to approach a drawing with the concept of implied line. So right now you're just using every mental tool in your tool belt that you have for when you start drawing. So I'm blocking in just the main shapes of this rose. So far in all of the classes, I've reiterated a lot how important value shapes are. So the shapes of shadows and the shapes of light. And as we talked about all of those shading techniques, I've emphasized how when you look at a form, try to see the form not as what it is, but as a series of shapes of shadows and shapes of light. And so there's a little trick that I like to use to help me see those shapes, and that is to make my mind a complete blank and look at any one shape that I'm seeing on my form. Like for example, this little spiky leaf that's coming off of the rose. What else could that spiky leaf be? Like what else could that shape be? I think it looks like a long skinny fingernail, maybe. Maybe that's too thin to be a fingernail. Or maybe a like a knife blade, like it's shaped like a knife blade, or a I mean, it's definitely a long triangle shape because it's a little wider at the bottom. What else could that shape be? Guys, give me some other, what else could this shape be? A bent ink nib, I love it. Anything else? Okay, let's look at this little shape of a shadow that I'm seeing in my rose right here. So like this one right here, I'm seeing, I already drew it, but it kind of looks like, what could it look like? Kind of looks like a bug maybe, or like, oh, like a clamshell. It looks like a clamshell. So rather than being like, oh, I'm drawing a rose petal, a noodle, a pencil tip, a triangle. All right, cool, a thorn. I like it. Well, I guess it kind of is a bit of a thorn, but yeah, whatever other thing you could call it other than what it is that maybe is easier to draw, call it that thing. Or maybe if you're seeing like little triangles or little rectangles, oh, I just moved my rose. Sorry for anybody who was drawing my rose. But try to draw the shapes that you're seeing rather than you know, whatever it is, because sometimes our brains tend to get overwhelmed very easily when we're drawing and we're trying to get to the end result a little too fast. And all these little things that I've come up with to help myself kind of slow down and just look at the parts rather than the whole, that really helps me to take my time and just draw every part of the rose that I'm seeing. So it's weird not keeping time myself. How much time do we have left, Jimena?
Plenty. It's barely been 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. It's been about 4 minutes. Okay, so I have blocked in almost all of my rows in 4 minutes I'm using my 4H, so I can make nice light lines, not putting a lot of pressure on my pencil. And I know that it's difficult to see my drawing at this point, but that's the whole point of drawing lightly. And then I'm going to put my shadows, try not to confuse my shadows with the actual leaves themselves. And then I've got my big shadow, and then I've got another shadow falling on this side of the rose on the table. Okay, so once I've blocked in all my shapes and contours and value shapes on my rose, then I'll switch to one of my B pencils. But if you want to get started on your lighter values first and not jump right to your dark values, do what makes you feel the most comfortable when you're starting out drawing. So everybody has to find their own path, and you can use any shading technique that you know. If you're not sure which shading techniques to use, using just a little smooth, continuous blend of tiny circles that build up to tonal shading might be the easiest for you. And once you've laid down quite a bit of groundwork of any one value, you can use one of your blending stumps to blend it in. So this is where we're using everything we have. I mean, if you can work quickly, you might be able to use these things in the shorter drawings as well. I'm just going to concentrate on developing my drawing right now. But as I'm doing this, I am going to kind of keep in mind what's coming next. And that's that I'll only have 10 minutes to do this the next time that we draw it. So in the 10-minute drawing that will start right after this one, I can maybe take note of any large areas so far that I've kind of gone back over a couple times, like this stem. I maybe didn't need to draw the stem so slowly. I might have been able to draw that a little faster, like maybe I shade it in as I go. Or maybe if I want a lighter value on one of these petals, I could go ahead and fill in that lighter pencil, or fill in that value with the lighter pencil while I'm drawing it rather than waiting to come back to it. There's a lot of things that you could do to cut corners. And if you were with us for the last couple of classes on the the hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and scribbling, then you know which of those shading techniques are going to help you move quickly through a drawing. And that would be the scribbling technique or the hatching and cross-hatching techniques. Cross-hatching is probably going to get you moving a little faster than the hatching, just since you can cross back over and go multiple directions with your line. So use everything you got. Use anything that you know how to use. So I am currently learning how to play the guitar, and it's been quite the journey for me since I first started learning how to play about 9 months ago. And when I first started, I was making some progress, and then I stopped because I got a new studio space and life happening. Just, you know, I could give you all my excuses why I didn't practice guitar as much for a couple of months, but everything that I had learned up until about April, like starting, well, I guess it's been about 8 months, like starting from mid-January to April, I was making some real progress. I'd learned a few chords. I was getting my hand to stretch across the fretboard and do some things that it couldn't do in January. And then I put it down and I didn't practice as much. And so it's very frustrating in this past month and a half or so since I've been trying to pick it back up again. I've forgotten a lot of what I did know, but I hadn't been practicing enough for it to be, you know, in my long-term memory or to become a habit or a muscle memory. And so now I'm having to relearn those chords that I did know back in April. So all that to say, if you are a beginning artist and you put in this time and this practice, try to keep this practice going. And this kind of exercise like we're doing tonight is a great one to come back to when you haven't drawn in a while, to kind of reacquaint yourself with the practice of drawing, because like I said, you're going to be getting some good observation practice in, and it's all about observation when we're trying to draw things like we see them. The more you observe and, you know, just the more time that you put in. But I know from experience, having taught adults for so many years now, that, you know, where was I going with that? Just the excuses. You know, we all make a lot of excuses, like I've been making to my new guitar instructor. And I'm sure he just loves it when I come to the private lesson and I'm like, I didn't practice as much as I was supposed to because my daughter got sick and da-da-da. And he's like, okay, yeah. You know, like he's heard it all before. He's been teaching guitar for 50 years, he told me. So my point is, I didn't know up until I started taking these private lessons what to do when I would start to practice. I would just like, because I'd forgotten the chords. And so he taught me this little chromatic exercise where I just use my metronome and I just play, just basically trying to get my fingers to stretch. But at least when I sit down to practice the guitar, I have something to do. I don't have to decide, well, what am I going to draw? Or do I need to be, you know, or for the guitar, like, what do I do if I only have 20 minutes and I want to sit down to practice? So for drawing, this is what you can do. If you're like making all the excuses and saying that you don't have time, which is very easy to do. And I understand, you know, you're tired, but you guys made it to this drawing class. So after this class, don't put your stuff away. Sit down in front of the TV and draw the remote, draw the, you know, the pillow on your lap, draw the TV, draw the vase across the, well, stick to something organic if you know, need the linear perspective practice, but just setting a timer and just saying, I'm going to draw, you know, I'm going to draw my other pencil on the desk for 10 minutes. Now I'm going to draw it for 5 minutes. And now I'm going to draw it for 2 minutes and then 1 minute, because you don't have to give yourself 15 minutes for the first drawing every time. But this is just a great exercise just to get your practice in, because you're getting a lot out of a practice like this. So I'm using a variety of shading techniques. I'm using hatching in my shadow just to fill in that entire shadow there. And I'm definitely taking my time. You're going to see my pencil moving a lot faster when we get to the shorter drawings.
You have a little under 2 minutes right now.
Okay, cool. All right, so if there's a little under 2 minutes, this is where I want you to switch to your heaviest pencil, so your 5B or your 6B, and I want you to really push any dark shadows that you're seeing. And even exaggerate them. So if they get to be like, when you're looking at the object, if it's only about a 6 or a 7 on the value scale, push it to a 10. Make it just like kind of pop off the page. So really just push your darkest values that you're seeing. And so you'll put a lot of pressure on your pencil and really just push those darker shadows that you're seeing. And then your medium shadows, maybe fill those in a little darker. We just want to make it stand out. Like, what were those bigger value shapes? What can we condense when we have less time into less work, but still have the same end result? I'm going to fill in some of my medium values pretty quickly here. I'm going to push my value on the shadow. So I'm just really emphasizing any dark shadows that I'm seeing. And also take note of where your brightest highlights are and what those shapes might look like as well.
And time.
Okay, so that's our 15-minute drawing. So you'll label that 15 minutes, and then we'll either flip your page or on the same piece of paper. I'm gonna flip my page. You could put these all on one piece of paper if you wanted. It looks kind of cool when you can see them all there together. Okay, so we'll go ahead and set our timer for 10 minutes and get started on the 10-minute drawing.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
And go.
Okay, so with this one, if you feel confident enough to start drawing with a darker pencil, I would advise skipping the H pencil for this one and maybe starting with a 2B. I'm starting with my 5B just because I'm pretty good about managing the pressure that I'm putting on the pencil. But if you're having a hard time with your pressure on your darker pencil, like on your 5B or your 6B, maybe switch to the 2B.
Adrian, could you bring the whole sheet up?
Thank you.
Because we can't see. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You'd think I would notice when I'm doing that, but
you're focused. Don't worry. That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. So this time around, I'm trying to move just a little faster. So I'm not going to hesitate too much about certain shapes and just put them in. It's okay if they're not, you know, exactly like in the previous drawing. If something's a little bit different, that's why it's good to use organic subjects, because it's unlikely somebody's gonna, you know, notice those differences between your two lemons or apples or whatever still life object you're using. Just blocking those in a little faster. And this time, as I get to those darker values, I'm going to go ahead and fill them in, which I didn't do with my stem, but I'm going to do it now. So hopefully after observing it with that 15-minute drawing, it's a little easier to draw it the second time. You don't have to spend as much time finding your way around the form.
So we have a question here from Jenny. So your drawing, we see more of the center there than in the actual flowers. So is that a choice that you make to make it look a little different than the exact copy, or what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, exactly. Since it's just an organic form and it's unlikely that somebody would scrutinize it too hard and say there weren't that many petals in the middle, I'm just kind of trying to get a general idea of it. So I'm looking at those basic shapes, and I was also trying to just go a little faster. So I was looking for the, you know, kind of the main shape of those shadows that I was seeing within the petals. And yeah, I made it a little bit different, but like I said, since it's an organic form,
And also, what we have another question about when you say keep it or keeping it organic or an organic form, what exactly do you mean by that?
Not geometric. So organic means it's just not a geometric form. It's not something we could necessarily measure. I mean, within the organic form, there might be like some triangles or rectangular shapes that I'm kind of seeing, but overall, you know, a rose is a organic form. Does that make sense?
Definitely makes sense.
Okay. So this big shadow right here, put that in. I'm gonna go ahead and fill that in pretty quickly. What's our time at this point, Jimena?
So we have 6 minutes.
Okay. Definitely moving a little faster than the last drawing, and that just comes from filling things in a little faster and not worrying about getting everything perfect. So definitely have to check some perfectionism at the door when it comes to exercises like this, because it's not necessarily for me, the purpose of an exercise like this is not to perfectly draw this rose 5 times. It's to, like I said, gain an understanding of the essence of the rose. What is it about this specific rose that sticks out to me the most? What shadow shapes and lines are the most prominent? Like, which ones have I found myself emphasizing so far in both of these drawings? For me, it's that big shadow that I've filled in twice. It's these little pointy leaves that are sticking out. It's the stem for sure. It's the darkest shadow on the inside of the rose. So for every form in the class that we've got in front of you, you've probably got some prominent shadows that are sticking out to you the most, or that you found yourself going over multiple times. So it's not necessarily even about finishing the drawings. For me, this is about gaining an understanding of how to capture the bones of a subject. What are the main shapes of shadows that tell the story of this item or subject? Hopefully by the end of this exercise, you'll know what those are for the form that you're drawing. I just listed all of the ones for me for this one, and I'm definitely at a point in this drawing that I was not at by the end of the last 15 minutes. But it's not about speed either. I always have to make sure I say that the purpose of this exercise is not to make you faster. I hope that I don't come across in any way in that I'm trying to make you draw faster, or I'm trying to make you be able to finish a drawing faster. It's not about that. The timed aspect of this exercise forces you to make choices and decisions a little quicker than you maybe would if you didn't have the time restraint. So it's going to help us loosen up, observe things like a little faster, because we observe them, but we maybe are hesitant to, do certain things in our drawing until we think that we've, gotten there, or we should, whatever things we tell ourselves like that. I haven't used my blending stumps very much so far. I'm going to pull out one of this is a good point towards the end of the 10-minute exercise to really use your blending stumps. So this can help you just fill in those shadowy areas a little faster. This will definitely come in useful when we have a little less time.
We have 2 minutes.
Okay, cool. Just try not to ever lean on your blending stumps too much. Like you want to do as much blending with your graphite as possible so that the blending stumps are just kind of icing on the cake. If we try to lean on the blending stumps a little too much, sometimes we just end up smearing things around. But if you blend a little too much, you can erase it back out. You definitely want to take note of what those big areas of light are. So try to start to condense some of the larger shadow areas that you're seeing. Like if there's several shadows that end up all getting mushed together when you blend, then next time you draw it, maybe you combine that shape into one larger shape. Use my H pencils now to push some of my lighter values because I kind of went a little too fast and filled everything in really quickly. So I'm going to slow down a little and put some details in. And so as I'm putting these details in, like I can ask myself what details are making it pop the most. Like I would say this little moment where I make that that leaf really pointy and I pushed the darker shadow there, or like this little edge of the stem here. Definitely that darkest shadow at the center of the rose. Maybe I want to erase out a couple of highlights and push those shapes of highlights a little more.
And time.
Okay. So that's our 10-minute drawing and we'll label that 10 minutes. And then we'll go to new page or just to the other side of your page if you're doing it all on one page. And we'll set a timer for 5 minutes. Please. Okay, so now's where we really start to feel. So did you start the timer?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, go.
Okay, so now I am definitely starting. So if you kind of were hesitant to start with the 5B or the 6B, this is where you just get over it and do it because you want to go a lot faster now. This one is going to start to feel like we're running short on time. And yeah, Jimena, if you could tell us when we've got like a minute left again, that would be great.
Sure thing. Okay. So we do have a question about the last one. So it looks like your shadow is darker than the actual shadow. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I want to emphasize the shadows just to really push the dark and light shadow shapes on purpose, just to mentally take note of what that shape is doing, because when we get to the 1 minute one, it's unlikely you're going to have time to even fill that in. So I want you to just quickly get the shape of it when we get to that point. So the more you emphasize that shape and block it off and make it nice and dark, the easier it's going to be for you to pick it out. Also, the more you push dark shadows in a drawing, you're going to create more contrast and it's going to make a more interesting drawing. It's just a trick to make things interesting really quickly.
Perfect.
And so far in the classes, when I've asked students to hold up their drawings at the end of the class, the ones that always seem to stand out the most are the ones where people have done that. So if you're hesitant to get your darker shadows in there, just do it. That's what I love about drawing with ink as a sketching tool. And there's definitely going to be some drawing in pen and ink classes coming up pretty soon. If you keep checking back. But that is because, you know, people tend to approach drawing practice in a very peculiar way, honestly. If we were to think about like the analogy of you know, me learning the guitar, or I love to use the analogy of a violin, because the violin is just a very difficult instrument to learn, right? And if this were a violin class day one, nobody would be expecting to be playing Chopin at the end of this class, right? If you've never picked up a violin, I mean, you would really just expect that you're going to make some really awful noise in the first hour, right? But why is it when it comes to drawing or painting or a lot of different types of visual art, people tend to think that they should just be able to pick up a pencil and just immediately draw a masterpiece? And if they don't, there's something wrong with them. And that is just something I'm always trying to dispel in all of my classes. So what's the big deal if you draw a line that you can't erase or you put it down really dark? The rewards that come from seeing what happens when you create contrast in a drawing are far greater than, you know, anything you feel like you've lost if you don't like the drawing or if you can't erase the line, you know? So I say, don't be afraid to get in there and make it dark, because that's, you know, after teaching for so many years, that's just something I see a lot of holds people back, the fear of making a mistake they can't take away. But we learn through those mistakes. So put it in there, make it dark, see what happens.
And 1 minute to go.
Okay, so I was talking and I didn't fill things in as quickly as I wanted to. Okay, so now it's starting to become apparent to me what the bones of this item are. And this is what I'm going to focus on in this next drawing when there is only 2 minutes. It's going to be this big shadow shape, this shape, all these prominent shapes that I find myself gravitating towards the most in each of these drawings so far. That's all I'm going to draw in the next one. And I might have time to fill in some of it, or I might not, but I'm going to go really fast and loose. Maybe grab that blending stump to speed it up. If you want to fill things in a little faster, like if your blending stump is a little, you know, has a little graphite on it, it might be easy to quickly get a lighter shadow going without even using your graphite. Fill things in nice and quick, but we're just
and time.
Okay, cool. So that's our 5 minutes. So hopefully you guys are seeing what the most essential shapes are, or the most essential lines. So the implied line is really you're implying shapes and lines. It's not just, but maybe not every line is a complete line, right? So some lines you maybe are gonna, some areas you've been darkening in more, and then you've been shifting to your lighter areas. So with this 2 minute drawing, you're gonna just draw those shapes. Maybe are not going to have time to fill in the shapes. So you're gonna end up with a sort of empty line drawing. Maybe, we'll see. All right, we ready?
Yep, and go.
Okay. So I'm even less concerned with making this rose look perfect this time, or look exactly like this rose, like this time, and my pencil is moving really fast and loose. I'm picking it up. I'm not even putting it down on the page the whole time. I'm just really moving as fluidly as possible, kind of doing a scribble technique here to fill it all in. And that definitely comes from years of practice of knowing exactly how to do that. But even with yours, I bet your pencil is moving a little faster. When I do this in a classroom, it's always fun during these 2 minute and 1 minute drawings to hear how quickly pencils and pens are moving across the page. Quickly fill in something if I have time, but if not, I'm just gonna focus on those overall shapes.
1 minute.
And this is where holding your pencil towards the back of the pencil is very helpful if you attended that very first class, or want to check it out later if you missed it. But the looser you are in your approach to how you're holding your pencil, the easier it's going to be to quickly sketch and fill things in.
And time.
Okay, so that was our 2-minute sketch. Now we're ready for the grand finale, our 1 minute, which is gonna go really fast. And I'm gonna grab my other 1 minute drawing because it fell on the floor real quick. So I can hold it up again when we're done. Okay, hang on, I've got something on that page. All right, we ready?
Ready? Go.
Okay. So maybe have your blending stump in your hand. Can you tell us when we've got 30 seconds left, Jimena, and we can like fill in shadows really quick? So just do what you can, folks. You're not going to obviously have a lot of details in this. Fast and loose. Fill in those shadows if you can, but mostly just drawing the shapes of those shadows. You might
30
even,
seconds.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You might even be able to draw it from memory at this point. Okay, so quickly use our blending stump to fill in anything prominent as quick as we can.
And time.
Okay. All right. Now I want to talk about our feelings. So tell me in the chat, how did you feel during that 1 minute sketch as opposed to the 15-minute sketch? Or which one did you like the best? Like stressed? Okay, who felt stressed in the first, the 1 minute one? Rushed? Okay, so it's usually divided down I saw somebody raise their hand. Okay, so if you felt stressed or rushed, then, you know, again, just tell yourself it's not about time. It's not about finishing. It's not about, you know, being a fast artist. What I like to hear usually is some people tell me they felt free, or like you felt loose. Like, how many of you liked your 2 minute or your 1 minute? Like, raise your hand or show me a little thumbs up, or if you liked your 2 minute or your 1 minute drawing the best. I saw a few hands go up. So that's what I like to hear, because, oh, and then yes, I always hear somebody, Olivia said, I felt more stressed during the 15 minutes than the 1 minute. I see a lot of hands going up for agreeing with that. That's wonderful. Yeah, because where is this stress coming from, right? Like, who's the author? Who sold that to you, that like you need to finish a drawing? Like, who told you that? I don't agree with that. I think in this beginning stages of practicing, it's all about being loose. So if you felt free and you felt loose and it felt fun, then you know, that's what you want to take away from it, hopefully. And yeah, more comfortable on the 1 minute. So yeah, if you were feeling, you know, stressed and rushed, then, you know, just, I think reminding yourself that the end result is it was all about the journey here. It wasn't about the final product. So, but yeah, hopefully what you're taking away from it is that you understood by the end of that exercise, what were the most essential parts of that form? What were the most essential shapes of shadow? So just a show of hands, how many of you felt like you had an understanding of that form by the end of it, or what were the most important shadow shapes? Hopefully lots of hands going up. Good. So that's where the implied line comes in. It's the lines that you didn't draw in that 1 minute maybe weren't that necessary to the bones of the drawing. And yeah, so use this exercise anytime you're feeling a little stuck or when you're having trouble with your beginning sketch, knowing where to start, because after doing this exercise, you definitely would know where to start getting started on that. You know, so maybe do this exercise on a piece of scrap paper and then get started on your nice drawing paper to draw something. Can we see some examples? Somebody asked to see the ink bottle sketches again.
Let me spotlight your overhead.
So that was my 15-minute. So I was definitely using smaller nib pens for that with the pens, and then using more, fatter, medium-sized pens for the faster drawings. And then when I got to the 1-minute one, I was using a brush pen. And when we get into pen and ink later on in this drawing series, I'll definitely have an entire class devoted to using a brush pen. So this will come up again. And honestly, everything we've covered so far will come up again in other classes. So if you stick with this drawing series, this isn't the last time I'm going to talk about implied line or maybe even some of the techniques that we use tonight. I want to see some of y'all's drawings before we say goodnight. Can Jimena
Sure.
spotlight some people? Oh, I'm seeing
here
awesome.
goes James.
Wonderful, James. Yeah.
Claudia.
Very nice.
And Barbara.
Look at that. And I love how you can get so much of the same, the drawings look so similar in across the time variation. Oh, wow. Look how far you got in 1 minute. Oh, those are gorgeous. Really nice.
KJ.
Oh, you guys have to post these on social media and tag me, tag Make It with Michael's and Michael's classes. I want to see all of these. I'm seeing so many great examples.
Emily.
Very nice. Yeah, another one where it's hard to tell you had less time on those. You really got far. Ooh, look at that.
And yeah.
Well, this was so fun. I told y'all it would be fun. And yeah, I saw a lot of people saying they liked the 10-minute one the best. So yeah, ask yourself, which one did you like the best? If you liked the one that was like 2 minutes or 1 minute, it's a good sign to, give yourself a break and loosen up and don't put so much pressure on yourself. Because yeah, a lot of people, like a couple of people said they felt more stressed with the 15 minutes than they did with the less time. So this is a great exercise to help you loosen up. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me tonight and for drawing along with me. And I'd love to see your work on social media if you tag it, if we didn't get to spotlight you. And I'll see you guys next time on Sunday. We'll be talking about composition and thumbnail drawings. So Sunday at 6, and that class is up on the Michael's online class list now if you want to go ahead and sign up for that one.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrienne, and thank you so much everyone who joined us today. We'll see you on Sunday.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.